Morning, guys. Cloudy, overcast day in Oklahoma. Been raining for the last couple days. I don't know. This year's been crazy because it seems like we've only had a few days in between rain. We're usually this time of year, everything's kind of turning brown because we're needing rain. But anyway, today I'm going to talk about buying used motorcycles, specifically classics. Who should buy them? What you should buy them for, what you need to look for, all that kind of stuff, right? So anyway, I'm going to ride my classic 700 Honda CB SC Nighthawk that I just got done restoring all the plastics and tank and everything on. It's kind of dirty because I had her out yesterday in between rain showers. But anyway, we'll ride this and talk about it. Let's do it. Let her warm up a little bit because she is carbureted and runs better warmed up, obviously. Probably could have used a little bit of choke today. It's not quite as warm as what she will start with, but that's one thing. So a lot of people nowadays don't know how to start vehicles with carburetors, whether they're cars, motorcycles, whatever they are. It's something you need to learn, but once you know it, it's not that bad. But a lot of people shy away from carburetors for that reason. We'll talk about carburetors more. So the computer takes care of all that for us. I think the technology is good, and it makes things so much simpler and stuff as far as not having to worry about stuff until things go wrong. Technology has actually dumbed us down, I believe. Which it's probably not nice to say, but it has in certain ways dumbed us down. In other ways, obviously, it's made us better because there's so much more open to us. You know, we're able to talk to people from all over the world like they're living right next door. I mean, a lot of the technology has really, really opened our eyes to a lot of things, but it's closed our eyes to a lot of things too, and a lot of people don't even realize it. So anyway, let's get back to the subject at hand. So, you want to buy a motorcycle, right? And we're going to talk about a couple different things, like first motorcycle, or just looking to restore one, right? And why you're looking to restore a motorcycle. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is first motorcycle. It's really tempting when you're buying your first motorcycle to find something cheap because you think, oh, I'm going to drop it, and I'm going to scratch it, I'm probably going to do this, I'm probably going to do that, whatever. There's all sorts of reasons why you look for a cheap motorcycle when you're buying your first motorcycle. Now myself, I personally don't think that you should cheap out when you're buying your first motorcycle. Now, can you look for a used one? Sure, and we'll go more into detail on that, but you don't want to cheap out. You don't want to buy a bike that's going to need to be worked on all the time. It's going to make you not want to ride, and you're going to just quit riding and just forget about motorcycles altogether. So, when you're looking for your first motorcycle, finding one that you know the history on would be best. Like maybe a friend bought one, and you know it's a good bike, it's just a little beat up because he dropped it a few times or whatever, learning how to ride. Great. Who cares if the plastics and the levers are broke and the plastics are scratched and stuff like that, as long as it runs and rides great. Smaller motorcycles, even brand new, aren't that out of control as far as price. People say, oh, I've got $2,000 to spend, and that's it. Okay, well, you can find a pretty decent used motorcycle for $2,000 if you look long enough and hard enough and know what you're looking for, and make sure you have somebody that knows what to look for to go with you to look at the motorcycle. But you only really need to save another $2,000. You can go buy a brand new bike. I mean, that $4,000 to $6,000 range Gets you some pretty nice little motorcycles. Now, are they going to do everything that you're going to want it to do? No, you're probably going to outgrow it. But the good thing about it is if you take care of your small motorcycle, they really don't lose their value too bad, because there are a lot of people wanting them. So if you've got a nice small motorcycle, you can almost get new price out of it. And that's even before this crazy, what do you call it, rise in prices on everything. I mean, that was even before, you know. So let's get into looking at motorcycles. First motorcycle. You're looking and you see, say, a bike comparable to this Nighthawk. Maybe not a Nighthawk S, which is kind of a special edition, but just a regular Nighthawk. 1985 model, CB750 Nighthawk, right? You're thinking, or not 85, because that would be a 700 like I got here. Let's say 83. 83 CB750. You're looking at it and you're like, man, that's cheap. I can get it for $1,500. Okay, well now you got to go in looking at it like this. Does it run good? That's a big thing. Engines cost a lot of money. So you're going to want to look, does it run good? If it runs good, everything else on a bike is pretty much stuff you have to replace anyway or maintain and stuff like that. And it doesn't cost a lot to do. I'm talking fork seals, rebuilding your rear shocks, tires. Tires are a pretty big expense, but that's something that's going to have to be done anyway eventually, all that kind of stuff. But when buying your first motorcycle and you've only got, say, $2,000 to spend, and you're going to go look at this $1,500 motorcycle, it needs both tires. Don't just look at the tread and how nice they look. Tires have an expiration date, and a lot of people don't realize that. They say 5 years from the time of manufacture, whether they're on a bike or not, or on a shelf, it doesn't matter. You can push that a little bit. They're going to last longer than 5 years. That's just the general safety, whatever you want to call it. But if they're 7 or 8 years old, yeah, they're going to be getting brittle and they're probably going to explode on you, even if they look like they're brand new. So right away you're looking at it and you're like, man, I got to put new tires on it. Okay? So now your $1,500 bike has just become a $2,000 bike before you even get to ride it safely. Now, does it need fork seals? Okay, well, if you can do that yourself, that's not a big expense, somewhere between $25 and $75 for the stuff you'll need to do to fix them. But if you can't do it yourself, it's about $300 for someone else to do it. So now you're up to a $2,300 motorcycle, and you still aren't really riding it safe. Brakes. Do the brakes work, first off? If the brakes work good, then your pads or shoes or whatever, if you have drums or discs, they're pretty reasonable, and if you can do it yourself, it's not that expensive, probably under $100. But if you can't do it yourself, now you're talking a couple $100 again or more, depending on where you take it. So all these things really add up quick, and pretty soon you've got $4,000 or $5,000 in a $1,500 motorcycle because you still haven't even made it look nice. And it won't raise the value of the bike as long as it's ugly. A lot of people look at how nice the bike looks before they're going to give you any decent money for it. Now, a little ding in the tank, a lot of people overlook that, stuff like that, but the paint being completely faded, scratched, plastics broke, stuff like that, they're going to tend to shy away from. Another thing that'll make people shy away is you got some ugly paint job on your plastics. Why did you paint them? Or you've got aftermarket plastics. Why did you put aftermarket plastics on? Do you have the old plastics to show that, I dropped it in my garage and broke one of the side fairings and it was cheaper just to get a whole set? Because factory plastics are expensive. If you don't have your old plastics and you got new plastics on a bike, generally that says the bike was wrecked at one point in time. So you got to start looking for other signs of if this bike was wrecked or not. So that's where it's good to bring someone with that knows what to look for. Clutch on a motorcycle, super easy to do, not very expensive. I wouldn't let a clutch scare me. Now, that's just a slipping clutch. If your clutch is making a lot of noise, and there's maybe even a vibration or stuff like that, that's probably going to mean you need a clutch basket also. So when you're buying an older motorcycle, you probably can't get a brand new clutch basket for it. You might have to find a good used one, and that can be tough sometimes, because a good used one is probably going to be in a good engine, and they're not going to want to sell just the clutch basket. Not always. You might find parts like that, but you see what I'm saying. It gets harder to find stuff. So another reason to stick with a newer bike. So that's your first bike. Me personally, if I was brand new to this and I was going in totally green and not having a clue, I'd save up my $4 to $5 grand and go in and buy a new or almost new bike is what I'd do. Because then you're going to be able to go out and ride it and enjoy it right away, learn how to ride, and do some maintenance on it, and learn as you go. You're not just getting thrown to the wolves. If you go buy a bike that you need to work on before you even get to ride it, and then when you do ride it, you find something else wrong, you got to work on it more, like I said, it's going to scare you away from the hobby. Classic bikes are meant more for secondary, third, bikes to have to play with, because you like playing with them. So that's about it for new riders looking for a used bike. Now let's talk about experienced riders. Looking for a classic bike. Why are you looking for one? Do you love that bike? You've wanted one since you were a kid, like me on this CB700. Saw it in a magazine, just fell in love with it, and knew I had to have one someday. So I never really went looking for one, but one happened to fall into my laps here about almost a year ago, and I did everything I'm going to tell you to do, and I ended up with it, and I've got it, and I love it. I mean, it's everything I thought it would be. I mean, really, technically, it had to be way far ahead of its time from back in the day. So, you're buying it because you want the bike, and you love it, and you're going to keep it, right? Put it in your collection. Don't worry as much about having to spend money on it, because you're not going to get rid of it. So it's like, money ends up being kind of like time then. It's how much do you love it? You don't need to worry about, I got too much money in it, now I can't sell it. Because if you have a little too much money in it, you don't care because you made it the way you want it. Now, on the other hand, you're buying an old bike because it's cool and it's a very desirable bike, and you think you can fix it up and make some money on it. That's cool too, but you don't have a lot of room for error on bikes. Margin for error as far as restoring a bike. So when you go in, kind of like I was talking about with the newbie, first things first, the engine better run good. Because if you got to replace the engine, already you're probably going to have too much money in the bike. Unless it's given to you for free, and then you might still be okay. But you see what I'm saying. If the engine runs good but the clutch slips, not a big deal. But do buy a good clutch set. Don't just buy some junk. If you buy a junk, cheap eBay clutch set, you're taking a chance on it just slipping right away after you put it in anyway. So, buy a good clutch set, put it in. The install's easy, like I said. But if you've got vibrations and shakes, kind of think about it. Can you find the parts for it? Do you have the parts for it? Are you going to be able to find the parts for it? Because if the bike is rare, or if it is popular, people are snatching up those parts already. So, just take that into consideration. Now, so it runs good. Even the clutch works good, right? If you can't do your own paint work, decal application, stuff like that, right there is going to be another huge expense. Plan on paying somebody, depending on how bad a shape your stuff's in and how much repair it needs. But just for a paint job on a motorcycle with no repairs at all, just having to take it apart, sand it down, spray it, and put it back together, I mean, you're looking at probably $500 to $1,000 minimum. I mean, that's minimum on it, you know. And if you want new decals for this Nighthawk, I was able to get them new, but they were, tighten that. They were, I think they were almost $300, you know. Now you don't want, same thing there, you don't want to buy cheap stuff because it's not going to look right. It's not going to look the same. It's not going to be right. Buy a good quality set, you know. So, you know, your paint job, making the bike look good, if you're just going all original, you're probably talking closer to $1,500 on average to do it. And then if you did it like I did this bike, where I sprayed everything black, cleared it, put my decals on. Well, first I sanded it with 1000 grit, put my decals on, and then re-cleared everything with 4 more coats of clear. You're probably looking at $2,000 because paint's not cheap, and that's quite a bit of extra work. So it might even be more than 2. But you know, and then if you're going full custom paint job, if you got a chopper or something like that, I mean, you can get crazy. $10,000, $20,000 for a paint job on a motorcycle. So take that in consideration if you can't do it yourself. Like I said, tires, they're expensive. You know, brakes if you can't do it yourself. You start getting into master cylinders that are bad. If you can't find rebuild parts, can't find parts, that's stuff you got to look into. You got to make sure you can do. Gas tank's rusted out. Can you find another tank that isn't rusted out? I mean, that kind of stuff's all stuff you got to look into. You know, seat cover, not a big deal. Seat foam, you can shape that. I mean, you know, recovering your seat's not that big a deal. It can be a little expensive, but not that big a deal. And most companies make covers for just about all their bikes. You know. Frame. Is the frame bent or cracked? Well, walk away. I mean, you're never going to recover your money on that kind of stuff. You know, and then you also do got to take your time into consideration. Time is money, right? And if you're spending 100 hours fixing up a bike, even if you charge half of what a shop would charge, you're, you know, just figuring it out yourself. You didn't charge that, but you're putting it in your head that you're charging $50 an hour instead of $100 an hour, and you figure it out, and you've got 100 hours in it. It's a lot of money. You know, that's $5,000. So your time is money too. Now, like I said, if you're fixing it up to keep because you love the bike, now that stuff kind of goes out the window because you'll probably do it in your own time and you know, you enjoy it and whatever. But you do need to take that stuff into consideration, you know. So is buying a classic or old motorcycle for everybody? No. It's probably only for a small niche few, and a lot of people find that out the hard way because they don't really realize it. And it's the same with cars. You know, people go in thinking, man, I want a 69 Camaro, or I want a 69 Charger. I've wanted one ever since I was a kid, and I can finally afford to buy one. Can you? So there's one in your local Craigslist or on your local marketplace that it's complete, everything's there. But it's rusty, it hasn't run in 20 years. It's got some dents, the interior's shot, you know, all that kind of stuff. You got to pay $10,000 for it. Now you spent all your money you had saved because you bought your dream car, and now you got to spend another, if you can't do the work yourself, minimum $100,000 to fix this car up. Can you afford it? Now, same situation there. You need to go look for one that's done, that someone else has enjoyed for 5-6 years, might have a few scratches and dings in it, you know, maybe the tranny went out, something like that, but that's what you need to look for. Spend $20,000 to $30,000, maybe even $40,000 if it's a nicer example, and be able to enjoy it. And then if you save up some money for a paint job down the road, you can fix, certain things. But you got to really go into this smart. A lot of these people, they buy their dream Charger. They buy little parts here and there thinking they're really building up some stuff. They finally get enough stuff where they think they're going to ask to see how much a paint job costs, and they find out that it's going to cost them, depending on what all needs to be done, 20 to 50 grand just for a paint job. So same thing with motorcycles. Go in smart. Other than that, like I said, take somebody with you that knows motorcycles, that's done this kind of stuff, that's learned the hard way, that still does it. I mean, that's going to be your best bet. Other than that, that's about all I've got for you guys today. Any questions about used motorcycles, any comments that you want to add, whatever, go ahead and comment below. Like and subscribe. I need to make more videos. I need some suggestions. Comment in the comments. I've been doing motorcycles and cars for going on 40 years. So I might not sound like I know a lot, but I probably know a lot more than your average person. Anyway, that's it. Adopt, don't shop. We will catch you on the flip side.